Welcome to the Lights in the Night Show with Russell Johnson, who wants to talk about and reveal what the United States government doesn't want you to know about UFOs and aliens right here in this country and around the globe. Russell has been following this material for over 50 years and will have guests who will tell their stories from around the world. Take down the number to call in, 888-565-1470, because Russell wants to hear your story. Our show also invites you to send your pictures and videos to UFO@amp2.tv so we can show them on our program at lightsinthenight.tv. Now, let's get to the Lights in the Night subject matter and hear what the government has tried to keep quiet for over 50 years. Again, get ready to call 888-565-1470 and watch on lightsinthenight.tv. Now, here's Russell with today's show.
Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to WNN 1470, lightsinthenight.tv. And what we do is present some ideas of UFOs, aliens, crop circles, pyramids, abductions, whatever. The strange stuff in the world, right?
Well, the thing the government has been trying to conceal, but now the people are getting wise.
Well, I think it's, across the world.
Yep.
Across the world.
If you read the book by Timothy Good, Above Top Secret, he talks about that. Well-researched, about 600 or 700 pages there. Well-researched. And so
a lot of evidence out there.
A lot of evidence out there. So we have a guest tonight. Will you... Is he on? Is on the air?
Is Greg on the air? Greg, are you here with us?
Greg is there.
I am.
Hey, Greg.
Hi, Greg.
South America.
Welcome.
Hey, Greg, listen, you have a very interesting story. And first, give us your website so people can go to your website and get more information about what you do and what you have done.
Well, the website related to our work is altcancer.com. And we've been online 20 years now. We went online September of 1995, so not a lot of people can claim they've been web merchants for 20 or more years. So,
What was that? What was the word before cancer?
A-L-T.
A-L-T, as in Alpha Lima Tango. altcancer.com.
Awesome.
And I suggest people go to that website. Listen, I was talking to a nurse today, and she had spoken to you a couple weeks ago because her son has cancer, brain cancer, 14 years old, but anyway, and you were giving her some advice. So you were saying to her, in essence, and correct me if I'm wrong, that there are cures for cancer, yes or no?
Well, I mean, there's... This is a point I make in a free online book called Metatopia. The point that I make is that there's actually no one cure for cancer. There's a whole variety of very effective cures for cancer, and what's really more astonishing is the degree to which the most prominent governments in the world have been able to completely suppress it. And that's the surprising part to me. The surprising part to me is not that there are readily available cures for cancer. I guess the part that shocks me most is the degree to which they've been able to get people to remain so stupid and gullible that they would actually believe the narrative that the best that we have to offer in this day and age is chemo and radiation, which are very destructive, very damaging to the immune system.
When she had called you...
They not only don't work, but they'll actually kill you. Because I'll tell you something, the people that we deal with who have been through chemo and radiation, we know how to cure cancer. We've got that figured out. Let me tell you what we haven't got figured out, and neither have any of the other people that I know that are in the naturopathic community. We haven't figured out how to cure someone who's got cachexia, is in a death trap. They've gone through chemo and radiation, and they're dying from the toxicity of it. Cancer is not difficult to cure. What's really difficult to cure is the effects of chemo and radiation. That's the part that's overwhelming.
I agree. I have a friend, and I didn't know that the ending, what was going to happen to him, and he has stage 4 colon cancer, and I was on with his wife, who's my best friend, and he just came out of the surgery, and she said his anus is sewn up, and his colon is now protruding out of his stomach where he has a bag. And I said, you know what? I would go everything holistic, alternative, and take my chances before I would even butcher my body more or less start putting poisons like chemo and radiation in it.
Greg, let me say that. Let me ask you this. The young lady who had called, the nurse who had called you a couple of weeks ago and had an in-depth conversation with you, they had recommended that her son, who's 14 years old, get chemo and radiation for 6 weeks in a row, every day. And you said, no, that's not the way to go. Now, they are continuing to do that, the FDA, whatever, to promote that. Why? Why are you saying? And you say they have. You think the doctors just don't know, or what is it? A conspiracy? What is this?
No, I believe a lot of them know, and I'll tell you why. And this is a point that I make in a recent essay. I wrote an essay in June. I have a periodic essay that I wrote called The Ashwin, and I've been kind of writing these periodic essays since 2001. And what I was noting in this essay was the number of physicians who have called me over the years and ordered products privately. The wife, daughter, son, uncle, cousin, coworker, someone they love, someone they care about, someone they'd like to see get better. And then in the course of the conversation, when I find out they're a medical doctor, I'll say, well, have you used any of this with any of your patients? And the doctors will invariably say, oh, no, I couldn't do that. I could risk losing my medical license if I use something like this with my, and moreover, they'll tell me that they themselves would never undergo chemo and radiation. And I guess the part that astonishes me is the lack of moral hazard. I never get the sense of, look, I really feel bad. I hope I'm not going to go to hell when I die, or something like that, because they know. I mean, for someone to tell you, look, yes, I administer chemo and radiation. I'm an oncologist, or I'm a doctor, and it's something that's I have to do because it's the only thing that the government will allow me to use for these various conditions. But I would never subject myself or a member of my family to it. I mean, what does that tell you right there? What does it say? Okay,
when a person has cancer, what do you recommend? I'm just curious. What have you been recommending?
Well, I mean, it depends on the situation. I mean, understand, I'm not. I don't have this blanket position where I'm against all things conventional. For instance, there are cases where surgical intervention is required, and what you really need is you need a good surgeon. I mean, one of the areas that they excel in, where they're not completely incompetent, is in the area of emergency medical services. I mean, as far as it relates to ER, there are certain areas, or in areas where burn management, for instance, where they have achieved a certain level of competency that's admirable. But in these other areas, especially as it relates to treating degenerative diseases, it's ridiculous. The results that people get, people who survive chemo and radiation, it's not because the chemo and radiation cured their cancer. It's because they didn't live because of the chemo and radiation. They lived in spite of it. These were indiscriminate killers of cells. Well, let's take a real good metaphor so that we could kind of orient your listenership into something that will make sense to them. Imagine a bank robber. I think everybody in your audience knows what a bank robber is. A bank robber has a gun or arms or bombs or something. He goes in, his goal is to steal money from the bank. I think everybody can understand that concept. What would happen if the police chief, who's in charge, or whoever's in charge of the operation to abort this bank theft, were to say, I tell you what we're going to do is we're going to get our guys together, we're going to assemble a SWAT team, and what you're going to go in is you're going to kill everybody. Get in there, kill the tellers, kill the bank president, kill all the customers, okay? And when you ask the police chief, well, why would you suggest doing something that's stupid? What would you think if his response was, well, if we go into the building and we kill everybody, anything that moves, we know that we will have gotten the cancer. Well, as insane as that line of thinking is, that's the same thinking that is behind chemo and radiation, because that's what it is. It's indiscriminate, indiscriminate killing of the cells, damaging the immune system, basically interfering with the body's normal body functions in a way that it's not discriminatory. Whereas,
okay, so you tell me what you're saying that won't work and hasn't worked.
What does work? What does work on the holistic end? Like if somebody were to call you and say, "Oh, I've been diagnosed with lung cancer," what might be some of the advice you would give to them?
Well, it depends on its size and its location. For instance, we've had some practitioners, not in the U.S., of course, but in the certain third world countries where doctors are actually allowed to make decisions as to what's best for their patient. There are still a lot of third world countries where doctors are allowed to make decisions as to what's best for the patient, not in the U.S., of course, but in other countries. And we've had the doctors who have actually applied the salve, the SRS, or primary escharotic, to the back and pull the tumor out of the lung right through the back.
Wow. This is a salve that goes on the back? Is this something you create?
Yeah, and it's transdermal. It penetrates, and it's we know what the mechanism of action is. It alters the membrane of the cancer cells so the body is able to recognize the cancer cells as an invasive agent, and the mechanism of the death of the cancer cells primarily comes through actions of the immune system itself. As a matter of fact, the resulting dead necrotic material, or eschar, that results from applying these various types of medicaments, if you take that to a pathologist and you say, look, I want you to study this tissue and tell me what's in it, the pathologist will come back to you and say, well, what's in it is a whole lot of dead cancer cells, and as well as some immune system cells, neutrophils, granulocytes, white blood corpuscles, which of course is indicative that there was a battle between the immune system of the body and the cancer cells.
Wow.
The body won.
Does somebody have now? Can you get that salve, like for instance, in the States, and have it sent, or do you need to go to someplace like Ecuador to have it done, or Mexico, or whatever?
We ship worldwide. It's just that the people that have a product or use it or sell it in the States, you're not allowed to make any claims. That's kind of the point of demarcation. You have to. I know it sounds ridiculous. It sounds savage. It sounds barbarian, but that's the law in the United States. In other words, as it relates to natural products that have not been through this incredibly expensive, incredibly arduous FDA process of having an NDA, a new drug application, you're not allowed to say what it is. It's almost like there has to be an underground bed of knowledge that people share privately. It's really insane. I mean, in the United States, you're not able to fully tell what apple juice will do, or
right.
The makers. I remember years ago there were a bunch of growers who got together who were documenting the positive effects of eating cherries. I mean, my God, cherries! And the FDA went after and sued them because they said you're making medical claims. It's that's the reason that I left the United States.
Okay, then we're great.
Right.
Hey, Greg. So if a person wanted to get whatever you're offering, they would have to go to your website. Is that what I hear?
It said you did not ship anything, that you actually had to go to a location or something.
I mean, if for things that are shipped to the United States, it's a website called herbhealers.com. It's a separate site.
That's a separate
HERB, the word herb, and then the word healers, HEALERS.com. So herbhealers.com is the products that ship to the United States. Now that site is set up in a way that it's been completely neutered. There's not much by way of medical information on there, but there's so much information provided by others who are not connected to me, who are speaking for themselves, who have documented what the products are and what they do, and that's how it has to be done, because the way the law is structured now, there can't be linkage between the claims that are made by ordinary citizens and
right.
the vendors of people who provide the materials themselves. There has to be a separation between them. In other words, it's illegal to tell the truth. When I was growing up, normally when you raise children, you try to instill in them teach them the virtues of telling the truth. And of course, it's very contradictory that when you become an adult, you learn that that you've got governmental laws that ensure that it's illegal to tell the truth, which is the real shame of it all.
They definitely make it tough on you, for sure.
Yeah, it really is. What would the product be called? It's a salve. What is the name of the salve?
Well, our United States registered trademark is Cansema, and a lot of people use that word now. It's kind of like hot sauce. Everyone's heard the word Tabasco,
right?
And people use it as if it's a common noun. But the truth is that Tabasco is actually the United States registered trademark of the company in Louisiana that kind of originated these various hot sauces, and kind of were the same way. Cansema is used almost as if it was a common noun. In fact, Cansema and Black Salve were used almost interchangeably, but we actually pioneered the entire art. We resurrected an art that had been dead and dying and rarely ever heard about in the early 90s, and actually brought it to the forefront and brought it out of obscurity so that many more people would know about it, because up to that time it was very, very few people had any knowledge of it. It was almost like an urban myth.
Many moons ago, I used to suffer from asthma, and in college at a University of Arizona, I'd end up in the emergency room, the university one, where Andrew Weiss is really big and stuff, and they would give me Tabasco and water to drink.
Okay, then let's get back to the cancer bit. You're saying that when people order this salve, if you will, that it works? Hello.
Well,
are you still there?
Not only there's a money back guarantee to it. I mean, we don't want people buying it if it doesn't do something for them. We've got. I don't know of anybody out there. I don't know of any website in existence that has more testimonials on it than we do. We've got a.
So you have a lot of testimonies on the product that it's effective. It's working. Is that what I hear?
Yep. Greg can't say it himself. Other people have to say it.
Is to basically
he can't say it?
That's what he was saying. He can't make the claims on his own website. He has to have other people say that it works.
Greg is not in the United States. Where are you living now, Greg?
I live in Ecuador.
Right, you're up in the Andes, right?
And you're calling from Ecuador. And we really want to get to that story. Now, so even in Ecuador, you have this website that people can order products, and you say they will help them, won't cure, whatever you want to say. But you can't talk more about that, even though you in hiding?
No, it's not that I'm in hiding. I came to a country. In fact, it's the reason I came to Ecuador is the fact that you can go to the open markets here, or Feria Libre, or the open mercados, the open markets where people sell herbs on the street, and they'll tell you this is what you take if you have problems with urinary flow. Here's what you take if you have asthma. Here's what you take if you have cancer. Here's what you take if you have arthritis. I mean, it's hardwired into the culture here. It would be here. It's a different world. It's like I live in a different planet than the United States, in the sense that here it would be unthinkable for people, especially among the indigenous, to talk about herbs and not at the same time provide people with a general knowledge of what they do, because their thinking here is, and I know this. Some people can't connect the dots and realize the importance of this. How is it you could sell herbs that are medicinal and not provide a truthful explanation of what they do and what they don't do, how they're used, what contraindications there may be, etc. You can't responsibly, if you're going to be a responsible person, you can't sell medicinal herbs and not tell people what they do. But in the United States, it's illegal to do so. You're only legal if you're irresponsible. If you want to be legal, you have to be irresponsible. Here's an herb. Well, what does it do? I can't tell you. Well, how do I use it? Can't tell you.
Yeah.
Well, what if I try to use it for this?
Okay,
I can't tell you. I mean, how insane is that? How insane is that? But that's the current situation.
Okay,
it's true.
Let's consider.
I came here because here they don't have this kind of, and I don't think they'll ever be able to make things in Ecuador so that it fit the United States model, because the herbs are in the life of the people. It's hardwired into their culture, unlike in the United States, where it's been, ever since the creation of the American Medical Association in 1848, you've had this long, steady decline into this state where everything is about singing the high holy praises of pharmaceutical drugs.
Okay, Greg, let's take a moment here. Let's take a break.
It's okay. Solutions are coming.
So slow
He's
down.
Passionate.
Let's assume that the FDA, all the people associated with the FDA, are despicable, diabolical, sinister, nefarious, whatever. Now, let's put that aside. Let's talk about some solutions now. I don't want to talk about how evil the United States is for 2 hours. I want to talk about some solutions to cancer. And you say you have solutions to cancer. Yes or no? Before you answer that, why don't you tell the folks, as an herbologist, your experience in dealing with herbs, your educational background and your research and all of that. Let's take a minute for that. Hello?
Yeah. Okay. Well, you piled it up there, so I'll try to take them in the order in which you pitched them at me. Well, first of all, in Chapter 4 of Metatopia, it's a free read. Doesn't cost anything to educate yourself. On Chapter 4 of Metatopia at metatopia.org, to answer your question of are there really effective cancer cures that work, and I mentioned them in that chapter, and a lot of them I'm not in any way connected with financially. If something works and I'm not connected to it and I don't sell it, it doesn't matter. I will still tell people about it in the course of my work, because I think that we have a responsibility to help people irregardless if we're connected to it or not. A very good example of that, for instance, would be the fact that I frequently tell people about biooxidative therapy. There's a lot of various different techniques using ozone therapy and hydrogen peroxide in innovative ways that actually have tremendously positive benefits, depending on the cancer type and its size and location and so forth. So that would be one example. A lot of the things that we recommend also have to do with lifestyle changes, which are not about anything financial. In fact, I just got an email this morning. I had a woman who was writing me, telling me she was taking a mushroom extract and asking me, what's the just a very open, nondescript question. What's the best thing I can do to boost my immunity?
Joy.
And my response to that email was if you ask me the question, what's the best product I can take to boost my immunity, it's not a product. The best thing you can do for your immunity is to avoid the things that destroy your immunity. GMO foods, seed.
So how do you identify those things?
Avoiding.
How would the average person identify those instances or things or products that will destroy the immune system? How would they do that?
It's about lifestyle. It's about looking for things that actually negatively impact the function of the body, and some of them are insidious and should be eliminated, because it's like if you were walking along and you got a nail in your foot. You could come to me and you could say, I'm really hurting, I'm in a lot of pain, what can you recommend? There's no product I can give you that is going to be as effective
as removing the nail
from the foot.
Can we find that list on metatopia.org, or are you just making...
Well, a lot of them are discussed there, but I mean, there's so many that have come up. I remember when Dr. Samuel Milhelm came out with his book. This is an epidemiologist. He's currently 83 years old, and he wrote a book called Dirty Electricity, Electrification and the Diseases of Civilization. It's really an excellent book, very short. I think it's like 110 pages. But even in just reading that book, one gets the sense of, if there's certain things I can do in my home, if I, as little as possible, keep a distance from cell phones, or use the devices that allow me to have a headset, so I'm keeping the cell phone away from my head, my brain, not using electrical blankets, not doing things that disrupt your electromagnetic field, because the body is, in a manner of speaking, a piece of electromagnetism. It's an electromagnetic machine, so you don't want to have all of these different things, which, according to this epidemiologist, have been shown to cause diseases, for which you can take products from the health food store, or even my own store, till you're blue in the face, but it's not going to be as helpful as eliminating the source of the problem. So all those
things that you described in his book, and again the name of the book.
Metatopia.
No, the gentleman with the 110-page book, the epidemiologist.
That's Dr. Samuel Milhelm, Milham, and the name of that book is Dirty Electricity, Electrification and the Diseases of Civilization.
Okay. To whom else would you recommend that people do research on? I mean, we know that Tesla had some stuff down. Are you doing anything with Tesla's inventions or creations?
I have, mostly in terms of equipment that has analgesic effects. We're not. I mean, there's a couple of devices that we ourselves sell, but I mean, there's a number of very excellent machines out there. Not that we're connected with them. I have a number of practitioners I work with in the United States that really feel the GB4000, and people can Google this, the GB4000 is very helpful. I don't deal in it myself, but I'm a big believer in that modality. I know people who've gotten phenomenal results using everything from like the GB4000, Spooky 2, Bob Beck devices.
There's a boomer
lot to be said for
machine.
this.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else you would recommend who has written a book or who has helped to cure cancer? I'm going to get back to that. I want to focus on that this evening. Hello?
Well, when someone asks me that, try to keep in mind that when someone uses that word cancer is a collective term for over 200 different
That's right.
malignant cancer cell types. There's never going to be a cure for cancer because cancer is not just one disease. I mean, you could talk about the physiological characteristics or the morphology of cancer cells, but truly, when you talk about cancer, you're spread over a very wide swath. And some things, speaking now as an herbalist, some herbs are very effective at certain cancer types and not effective in others. For instance, an herb that's used here extensively, it's a sap from a tree. It's very well known. It's called sangre de drago, which is Spanish for blood of the dragon. Now, for cancers of the reproductive organs, prostatic in men, cervical, ovarian, and uterine in women, it's very effective. I wouldn't use it for lung or liver or brain cancers because it's just not effective. But for some reason, it's very effective and toward a wide range of cancers of the reproductive organs. So whenever we talk about cancer, we have to respect the fact that it's a collective term for a wide variety of malignancies.
All right, now you say, for instance, when I referred you to that nurse, and we won't call any names, and she had a lot of long discussions with you, what did you recommend? And her son has brain cancer and he's 14 years old. And what did you recommend for her to do? And she didn't go forward with the protocol that doctors had recommended, with chemotherapy and radiation for 6 weeks every day. What did you recommend for her?
Internal escharotic, we have something called tonic 3, Amazon tonic 3 that's mentioned extensively in literature out there, and a lot of people have talked about it in terms of its effects. It's just it's a general escharotic material. It does internally. Its mechanism of action is the same internally when people use it as a salve as externally. And by the way, just so that you know that there's a historical aspect to this, I do provide very solid evidence in Metatopia that escharotics have been used privately to cure cancers for 500 years. Wow. So let's talk about, please, donate your money today because we're so close.
I know, what a bunch of BS, right?
People are going to be hearing that crock 500 years from now, 800 years from now, 2,000 years from now, if we can continue to give these people a free pass.
Right.
And that's what you were doing, because I provide very solid evidence in some of the essays that I've created on alt cancer that cancer is not a medical disease. It's more of a political disease.
Yeah.
It would be a medical disease if there weren't cancer cures in existence that have been around for centuries. But because there are cancer cures that have been around for centuries that have been consistently suppressed by medical authorities and their hatchet men in the governments, we have to say that cancer is far less of a medical disease than it is a political disease.
What other recommendations would you have people go to do research? I mean, a lot of people are concerned about this. I mean, cancer is a big deal in the United States. Would you agree?
It is, but, cancers, I use the French biologist René Dubos in Chapter 4 to kind of form a theoretical structure for understanding what cancer is, and it's about maladaptation. The body was meant to perform optimally under certain conditions, like your car. Your car will perform best if you do things like, occasionally change the oil and the air filter and the fuel filter and put gas in it when it's needed and keep it clean, et cetera. There's certain things you could say that your automobile will function best if certain conditions are met. And the same is with the human body. The situation that exists now is most diseases, particularly most degenerative diseases in the West, are diseases of affluence. And so civilization itself is a disease-causing mechanism. be on the course of just one interview to try to explain that, because it can get complicated. But really, we are surrounded. We live conditions that are so far removed from the conditions of, let us say, our ancestors 200 years ago. But let us say before the industrial era. We live conditions that human beings were never meant to live under.
Okay, hey, we have to take a break.
Electromagnetic pollution.
Let's take a break here.
Pollution of the food supply.
The engineer says we must take a break. This is WNN 1470 AM, right here in Boca Raton, and we are talking about lightsinthenight.tv, and we have Greg. He's
Jansen,
he's with us, and let's take a break. And anyone who wants to call in, you may call in and ask him a question. And that's 888-565-1470. 888-565-1470.
Are you dealing with chronic pain? Would you love to increase your energy and vitality? I know I had excruciating back pain. It hurt to stand, it hurt to sit. I would do exercises my chiropractor gave me, and I worked through that pain, and then I was introduced to Soul. Visit www.yes2soul.com to buy some today. Soul is an incredible health and wellness product made of seeds, black cumin seeds. Now, when I researched the health benefits of black cumin seeds, I was shocked and happy to learn that seeds have been used for thousands of years to bring relief to a wide range of health issues. Soul is a great product. It's also a great business opportunity with Rain International. Call me today. My name's Jessica. You can reach me at 954-379-7260. And let's talk about Soul, or visit yes2soul.com. Or call me 954-379-7260. Invest in your health and wealth today. Hey, business owners, are you frustrated because you can't find great salespeople? You know, the kind that close the deal and bring in the cheddar? Advertise your open sales positions on the salesmojoshow.com. You get live mentions and web career finder presence Wednesdays from 7 to 8 p.m. on WNN 1470 AM. The Sales Mojo Show will have therapy sessions for salespeople, helping them find, sell, and close prospects, as well as offering a simple way to find a great sales career job, your job. Hit up the employee line at thesalesmojoshow.com and tune in Wednesdays 7 to 8 p.m. on WNN 1470 AM and close the deal.
You are listening to the Lights in the Night Show with Russell Johnson, who invites you to call in at 888-565-1470 and send us your pictures and videos at UFO@amp2.tv. Join the conversation and let us hear your story. 888-565-1470. Now, back to our show.
Okay, back here, WNN 1470, Boca Raton. Lightsinthenight.tv. Hey, Greg, let me do some specificity, if you will. I just want to know, in addition, if you say you have some cures and you're talking to other authorities, other people you're working with, whomever, who else should we be listening to? And in addition to the book you talked about, are there any other references, any other websites, any other people that we should be listening to in terms of looking for alternative cures?
Well, as it relates to people that I associate with, let us say the U.S. and Canada, I mean, this is really shameful, and I don't know any other way to say it.
Okay.
Most of the people that I work with that are practitioners, they don't want me on the radio giving out their name. They don't want to be
associated with you.
They don't want to ever have to go through what I went through when the FDA came in and completely destroyed my lab in 2003, stole $500,000 in inventory, and then let me sit in a jail cell for 7 months, wondering what are they going to charge me with, and then in July of 2004, take me into a back room in the prosecutor's office in Lafayette, Louisiana, say, if you can come up with $300,000 in cash, we can make this go away.
Ugh,
Look,
sick.
I saw more criminality during what happened to me in 2003 and 2004 than I can shake a stick at. But
in
I know that you're wanting me to make referrals. I'm sorry?
In essence, they chased you out of the country. Is that right?
Or they made it
welcome
welcome
you. I
you.
don't want to word it quite that way.
Okay,
but it looked like it was.
But you had to get out.
They were doing something where it was their intent to actually get me to leave
What
the
did
country,
they say you were doing
then? I don't think that's accurate.
Great. Let's what did the government, the FDA, trilateral commission, whatever. What did they say you were doing that forced you out of the country? What did they say? What did they accuse you of?
Well, again, they didn't force me out of the country. What they did was they said that the natural products that I was selling were not FDA approved, even though the products that I was selling were natural products for which you could not and would not ever file a new drug application because they weren't drugs. They said they were drugs. And I think what was really driving it was they thought that I had millions of dollars in offshore bank accounts and all this kind of nonsense. And I get into the whole minutiae of this in Metatopia. But, I mean, you mentioned Trilateral Commission. That doesn't have to do with anything with it. This is a very specific action that was against me by the Food and Drug Administration, no other agency, not the Federal Trade Commission, not the FBI or ATF or pick your alphabet agency. No, one agency, FDA. And
didn't Interpol
to leave the go ahead.
Didn't Interpol join them on the arrest?
No. That was much later. In 2009 or 2008, they went ahead and what had happened was, and again I explained this in exhaustive detail in Metatopia. What had happened was, I found out that I had went ahead and filed with the court in Louisiana to have the probationary period cut short to 1 year. There was actual process that the Department of Justice created to do that. So using their own guidelines, I filed that. And then I found out that they were planning to, they were working with an employee who had embezzled $20,000 while I was in prison and working with her to have me put back in prison. So when I found out that I had a 0% chance of winning my petition in court and a 100% chance of being sent back to prison, the whole thing was a setup. That is when I made the decision not to return in 2007. And so then in 2008, sometime in 2008, I don't know exactly when, they went ahead and put me on the Interpol Red List, put my picture in the paper with Osama bin Laden, said I was one of the world's most wanted criminals.
Wow.
Had me in the February 2008 issue of Parade magazine. I was getting calls from the United States where people said, "This is unbelievable. You're up there with Osama bin Laden. Do you realize you're like one of the 10 most wanted criminals in the whole world?" It just got complete. And of course, the fact of the matter, the proof that everything that Interpol said was a lie is that I'm talking to you. You and I are talking right now.
Right.
And that's the proof. Because if anything that the Interpol and the U.S. government says were true, and I was up there with Osama bin Laden, I did any of the things that they said that I was doing, they would have put me so far into prison, they would have had to pipe in the oxygen and feed me with a slingshot. Okay? It's ridiculous. I mean, it was a probationary matter. I served 21 months in prison. The details for that are extensively, again, in Chapter 3 of Metatopia. And when I got back here, very much like Julian Assange, there was a committee meeting because I had formally been deported, and what the findings of the Ecuadorian government were, this is their formal findings, I have all the documentary evidence online, was that what the United States government did was completely illegal. Now, I don't want to get into that because you said earlier you don't want to make this, you want to make this more focused on the medical aspect.
I really do. I mean,
I'm fine with that. Actually, I prefer that because I want to, personally, I don't really care to go to the past because for me it is the past. I came back here in 2011. This is 2015, but for those people who are curious, I do have all the material online and all the documents to show that what they did was very illegal. It was an extraordinary rendition. It was a kidnapping. I was formally kidnapped.
Yep, you were kidnapped. I'm familiar with this.
Okay. I didn't want to bring that up unnecessarily. I don't want to rub salt in the wounds, if you will. But I just wanted to really kind of give people an idea of some of the things that you have gone through as a result of trying to help people. In an alternative sense. And I wanted to at least get that on the table. But I see we have about 15 minutes or 20, whatever we have left. What would you recommend when people are diagnosed with cancer? What would you recommend? I'm trying to get to the specificity of all of this. What would you recommend?
Well, the first thing I recommend is that people attempt to eliminate, either mitigate or eliminate the causative agents that are inputting to it, because you can take all the anti-cancer products in the world, but if you don't
remove the nail from the foot, so lifestyle change.
Greg, what would you say? What would you recommend?
Well, for instance, if people have improper diet or if they're eating foods that are, I mean, there's a great deal of evidence now that support the fact that genetically modified foods, GMO foods, are cancer-causing. They're carcinogenic.
Okay, all right, that's one. Good.
That Monsanto, huh?
I said that's good. That's good. You say GMO. Stay away from GMO foods that have been modified. Okay, what else? Suppose I eat McDonald's hamburgers with French fries every day and drink a Coke. What would you say about that?
Ask the guy on Supersize Me how that worked out.
Sorry,
go ahead, Greg.
What would you say about that?
It was very harmful. I mean,
what's harmful
one of the reasons
about
in
it?
the United States, in particular, have such high rates of colorectal cancers is because of the lack of fiber in the food, the lack of the fact that there are so many agents that are used now in the ag section that are carcinogenic. I mean,
Hey, Greg, I have a question for you. I'm a mom of two. I have a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old. And as I started to learn about all these chemicals and food and stuff, I really started to monitor what they were eating. And then I go around other family members who are older and maybe not as, thinking about health. And the way they frame it is, well, I'm going to give your kids this stuff because, everyone else has grown up that way. It can't really hurt them if they do it once in a while. Where my argument is, well, if it gets into their body, that's all chemical based and it's all made around making their bodies want that bad stuff. And so I just don't even want them to have it in their diet, if you will. But I get pushback from other folks saying, well, it's just food. It's not that big of a deal.
So,
it's horrible logic. Right. It's horrible logic. Probably as it relates to kids, because you brought up kids that are 9 and 6 years old. Probably the worst thing in the American diet is just the proliferation of refined sugars. Obviously you're gonna find sugar throughout nature in fruits, C6H12, and 6. Okay, fine, but it's totally out of control based on the diets of earlier peoples. I had a friend of mine that was a medical doctor. I won't say his name on the air, but he was in Lake Charles, Louisiana, and he was a collector of old newspapers. And what this guy did was kind of a strange habit. He'd read papers from the 1800s, and he'd love to read the obit section. And he told me this. I said, "Why would you do that?" He says, well, I want to read the obit section because I enjoy, even though I understand it's anecdotal, but I enjoy reading as to what people died of, back in those times and just, compared to the obit section today and how different it is. And I said, well, what are the biggest things you find? He says, well, there's certain things that people died of then that they don't die at all of now because of changes in lifestyle. For instance, a lot of people died from burns, and you had the hearth, you had a fire for cooking and for drying clothes and so forth, and it wouldn't take much for a fire to start and someone could get severely burned and die. But he says, on the other hand, cancer was rare. Cancer was heart disease, arteriosclerosis. He said there's a whole variety of lifestyle-based illnesses that you're hard-pressed to find those in the obit sections of newspapers of the 1800s. So I thought that was really interesting practice. But I can tell you that the people that I meet that are the healthiest here, especially among the indigenous, they don't eat a lot of sugar.
Okay.
They don't eat so that. And the other thing is, and this is particularly pertains to people who live in the United States. I presume most of your listening audience is in the United States. Is the fact that you've just got this, you've got this high DE dextrose corn syrup, and it's all over the place.
High fructose
and
corn
it's
syrup.
Very damaging.
Yes.
It has it chelates minerals out of the body.
How would that pretend
sugar?
sugar?
The best thing you can do for a child, and I understand, I'm not going to sit here and say that it's easy. It's not easy, especially if you're a mother. It's not easy, and I'm not going to pretend that it is. But if you could somehow get the kids to get
they're educated. Once I explain to my kids,
away from the sugar, they're better off.
They are. Well, and I guess this is, I explained to my kids because they tell me it tastes so good. And I said, well, that's literally the chemicals going into your brain and saying, I taste good, but in reality, it's not beneficial to your body. And I guess the question I was asking you is, if they have high fructose corn syrup in other places, but not so often, I guess
it's balanced. It's not as bad. No.
It's not as bad, and it's not going to. Okay. I guess I just assume it kind of gets buried into their brain, and then it makes their brain want it more.
Okay. I'm going to go back to cancer again.
That's over more.
But that is cancer. I mean, at some level, right?
Of course,
thing.
By all means. By all means. No. I just want to ask you, we have about 10 minutes left. Greg, you said that there's so many variety of cancers that it will never be cured. You'll never find a cure of that. Now,
because he said it's maladaptation of the body.
right?
Yeah, I think you're mischaracterizing that. What I'm saying is that if you have this collective term, this word, cancer, and what cancer is it's a collective term for over 200 different types of neoplasms.
Okay.
So in a manner of speaking, 200 different, conditions which are united by certain abnormal cell development, but nonetheless have certain differences. What is the likelihood that you're going to find one magic bullet that will be the cure for everything? And what I'm saying to you is, it's not likely.
But
except for balance.
There isn't a cure for cancer. And
balance.
There are,
but you
the
have cures
differences
for
between the different types of malignancies needs to be respected.
right.
Okay, but Greg, you are also attached to a George Green, or I don't want to go on, and I guess Andrew Basago, and Laura Eisenhower and Linda Moulton Howell and all those people, right? Okay, now that being said, don't you think that the Greys or the reptilians or the Nordics or some species in the galaxy would have a cure for cancer? Would you, or would you say that?
I'll tell you what I'd say. I don't know if you're familiar with Iarga,
Okay.
Divaboa, or any of these other works of people that have been taken up to visit other planets, either psychically or there's some excellent work out there. I'll tell you a common thread I find in the work of people who have actually visited more advanced civilizations, that we really, really, really are in the bottom rung of the ladder. This is probably the most mismanaged planet in the entire universe. I mean, right now we are seeing habitat collapse all over the world. I don't know if you're familiar with the work of Loren Murray or Dane Wigington or Professor Guy McPherson, but to hear someone, let us say, like McPherson, Homo sapiens have got 30 years, maybe. I was sitting down and having lunch with a friend the other day because we got a fabulous zoo here in Cuenca.
Whoa.
Just like you got a lot of great zoos. You have a lot of great zoos there in the United States. So we have a zoo here, and it takes 4 hours to walk all the way through it. All kinds of different animals.
This is a zoo.
But they were telling me there's a plastic rhinoceros, not a real one.
Okay.
And I said, what do you mean, a plastic rhinoceros? Yeah, a big one. And there were two Canadians that were telling me this because they were friends of mine visiting from Alberta. And she said, yeah, look at this. And she pulled out her smartphone, and I'm looking at this plastic rhinoceros on the screen. And then in the next image, it had a sign. It was in Spanish. And of course, I can read Spanish. And basically it said, we basically lament the extinction of the black rhinoceros, which officially went extinct in 2014.
Oh.
And what flashed through my mind in that moment, because we're seeing habitat collapse all over the earth right now, according to McPherson, we're losing over 200 species per day now. I thought, I'm wondering if there's a time real soon where we're going to say, hey, kiddies, come on, children, look over here. There used to be these creatures, and they used to fly in the air, and we called them birds, and
I'm with you.
I know it sounds like I'm being
but
facetious, but that's where we're headed.
We're
We're
way
literally
off
seeing
cancer.
collapse all over the earth, and
We're way off of the issue of
Asked
cancer.
question about
Actually,
how
we're
the
not.
ETs
Yes, we
feel.
are.
I think they think we're nuts.
Greg,
If you look at the work of, the abduction.
If I may,
I'm sure that you're working
Greg,
with John Mack.
hello, can you hear me? Hello. I think we just got off the issue of cancer.
But here's my debate on it. If we lose everything and all the rainforest, then we lose all the cures
Hey, listen,
to the cancers.
I don't want to save the earth from. You're saying that in 30 years you believe that the human beings will be extinct. I don't agree with that, and my sources say no, that's not true. So I think you got some bad information from somebody.
Did you say that? That's what I wanted.
Do you really believe that?
No, did you say it? We both.
Wait a minute. I got better information than that. That you guys who saying it's the end of the world in the next month or 2 or 30 years, they say no way. That's false information. That's like talking about that Y2K deal back when that didn't happen.
Well, the problem with this whole line of discussion is that I can't get myself involved in myths. I've got to go where the science takes me.
Okay.
I had a world-class scientist. I'm not going to say his name because he's widely known. I don't have his permission to use his name, but he's a friend of mine. He and his wife were visiting our house, and he brought with him an identifinder, which is a 30 with all the attachments anyways, about a $35,000 piece of equipment. This thing is leagues and leagues beyond any kind of Geiger counter you've ever seen. And because I was a little bit thinking, here I am on the eastern Cordillera at 10,000 feet in the Andes Mountains, and if the United States were to totally,
implode,
if this Fukushima thing gets out of control, it doesn't matter, I'm safe. And what he did was, he really woke me up, is that even here, as remote as we are, 3 degrees south equator, the alarm was just going off continually. Gamma ray burst, neutron ray burst, strontium-90, iodine-131, cesium-134. I was just sitting there with my mouth open in a complete state of shock, because what I realized was that we are all being absolutely inundated by this stuff, and
Okay. I keep hearing the end of the world, but I don't believe that.
Right. Why be all trying to cure cancer and get the message out if we're all going to be dead in 30 years anyway?
I don't believe that. No, I think you guys are off on your timetable, George Green, you and some others, but it's all right. We always can agree to disagree, and it's not a problem with that. That's what creates balance. But what would you...
Well, go back for a minute. You can email me, and then I'll provide a written response, but if I'm really curious to know the source of your optimism.
Oh, no. We won't go there.
Bill Joy wrote in Wired magazine in 2000, try to keep in mind that's 15 years ago, he wrote an article that kind of caused people's jaw to drop back then, because remember, this guy's a co-founder of Sun Microsystems, one of the largest, most successful companies in the history of Silicon Valley. In the year 2000, he writes an article called The Future Does Not Need Us. And he makes similar arguments, although they're more vague as to what the etiology is, but nonetheless, some people, let me tell you something, because when you say to me something like, well, I just don't believe it, I have to ask why. I was listening to, there's a guy in New Zealand, guy's name, he's this cheeky kid in his 20s, he does these interviews, he's actually pretty entertaining, it's called Vinny Eastwood, and he does something called the Vinny Eastwood Show, and his guest was Guy McPherson. And I was kind of like you. I was like thinking, boy, this guy's really off his rocker. This guy's completely, this is a pretty healthy piece of doom porn over here. And so he's got Guy McPherson on, and he makes the statement in the middle of the interview that Steve Wozniak, the co-founder of Apple Computer,
right,
calls Guy McPherson in Arizona on the phone and says, I really thought you were a complete, total whack job. But I decided to put my best, remember he's a billionaire, I decided to put my best scientists on it because I really wanted to show that you're completely off your rocker. And I've come to the conclusion that, unfortunately, you've got all your facts together and you know exactly what you're talking about. I'm moving to Australia. In fact, I'm going to go for Australian citizenship and abandon Silicon Valley. While I'm hearing this is live now, I'm thinking, yeah, that really sounds made up. So while I'm continuing to listen to the interview, I get on Wikipedia and pull up Steve Wozniak's bio. You could do this yourself.
Right.
And sure enough, I can't believe it. He's abandoning ship. He's leaving California. He's moving his entire operation to Australia. He's petitioning for Australia.
I got all that. I got it. We have 3 minutes. Listen, I got all that. I understand that. What's his name? I can't think of his name.
Steve Wozniak.
No.
Oh,
Benny Eastwood, Guy McPherson
might step in and help us out a bit.
Of course, they're not going to. This planet's not going to be destroyed. That's way out.
That's
there.
just more doom porn.
I didn't say the planet's going to. I didn't say that. I didn't say this planet's not going anywhere. We are.
Right? Yeah,
Okay.
the planet's going to stay as the humanoids that will
maybe deservingly
transform.
You understand, and I understand that the crystal kids and the indigos and all the hybrids are being created to take over the world in the next 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. You know that, and I know that, okay? Now, let's do, in the last couple, yes or no?
Yeah.
Yes or no? Hello?
Well, I mean, you're making the subject uncomfortably simplistic. Because it's more complicated. I believe that there is such a thing as ascension. I believe there is.
Okay, all right. We won't. Listen, I have to bring you back for that. We have 2 minutes. I have to bring you back for that.
Yeah,
we were talking about cancer cures. Can, in the last 2 minutes, help the people who may have some issues with cancer? What can we say? Go to your website. What would you say?
Well, I would say, yeah, they're going to find a lot of material at allcancer.com. It's all free. A lot of it doesn't involve buying anything. It involves looking at lifestyle issues, and that's short-term. And of course, that's completely divorced and separated from our discussion about habitat collapse or ecological
Come
issues.
back for that. We want to have you back. And how the indigo children are going to save the world. Save the humanoids anyway. The world doesn't need saving.
We'll be back with that show. So go to your website. Your website is, come and give it to us again.
Altcancer.com.
Okay. And the other website,
Herb Healer.
Herbhealers.com.
Mm-hmm.
Hey.
And the free online book is metatopia.org.
And that's where they can download that.
Thank you
Greg,
so
thank
much.
you for being on the show.
For being on the
You've
show.
been listening to LightsInTheNight.tv. I'm Russ Johnson. There's Lady Barrett, or Christopher, Lady
Russell's tongue Christopher.
And I'm Jessica, just in case he forgets.
And it's all happening here.
That was great, Greg. Thank you.
Thank you. I really
Greg,
appreciate
you're
it, Greg.
awesome.
You've given us a lot of information. Thank you. And so next week, right here, same time, same place, right here at 1470 AM. LightsInTheNight.tv. Thanks for listening.
Are you dealing with chronic pain? Would you love to increase your energy and vitality?